Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. We had no idea if there's anybody interested in taking their constitutional rights back or not, but it looks like there are a few. We'd like to start this meeting like our founding fathers did, by having an opening prayer and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Nick?
You. I don't know if it'll fit on my big head, but... Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? A little louder? All right. Well, welcome. Everyone to bow their heads. We'll do Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit, all the heavenly host. Please bless this meeting. Bless everybody in this meeting. Cover us with your precious blood, dear Lord Jesus. May we pick up the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the girdle of truth, the gospel of peace, the shield of faith, and the sword of the Spirit, the word of our Lord Jesus Christ. Please allow these words tonight to echo out into the world, into the hearts of men and women alike, so that we can preserve our way of life and defend against tyrannical bodies, foreign and domestic. Through Christ our Lord, amen. Good luck, brother.
Please say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. The flag's up there. Pledge allegiance, flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm a free-born American citizen, and I intend to stay that way. And a part of the reason I got involved in this movement, electing a constitutional sheriff, I thought was probably one of the best ways to do that, to cut down on government overreach. Next, I'd like to thank Mike Lockey, who's the owner of this facility. He was gracious enough to let us use this to put this on, because he thought enough about the Constitution and our rights that are being taken away every day to let us use that. Mike just came in now. He's back there in the back of the room. Few things. Bathrooms are right behind the manure spreader. How appropriate. Now, whether you have to use the restroom or not, I would highly recommend you going in there. It'll be a worthwhile experience, and that's all I'm going to say. The exits are back there and over here. There was popcorn over there, but it looks like it's all gone. If anybody hasn't signed up at the registration table, we'd like to have you register for future events that we're going to have, because we're going to have another speaker come in Arlington, Iowa, and I'll talk about that later. But that's a way of us being able to identify you and where you're at and how to get a hold of you. It's secure, so you don't have to worry about us using your information anywhere else. There's books and literature on the table back there. Some of it we charge a little bit for. Can't hear? Oh, back there he's waving where he's at. There's some of it's free and some of it we got to charge a little bit for. There's also a donation can back there if you so think you found out enough information tonight to help support this operation. Donations would be appreciated. We'd like you to we're going to have a video after this PowerPoint presentation. We'd like you to hold your questions and discussion for after the video so we can cover it all at once. If any questions, anybody that's got one of these lanyards on, if you got any questions, they can get your questions answered or find you somebody that can answer it. Tonight's agenda, we're going to have an overview of who That's okay, Mike. I'm used to it. We're going to have about a 12-point PowerPoint presentation about we the people for constitutional sheriffs and what the sheriff's ability and his responsibility is. And then we're going to have a video that includes the first person on there is Kris Hall. She's a constitutional attorney. and then we're going to have Sheriff Mack on there. And Sheriff Mack was a sheriff in Graham County, Arizona, and he sued the Clinton administration back when they passed the Brady bill, when they told the sheriffs they had to collect information on our guns. And Sheriff Mack said, no, we don't have to do that. That's not our job. Decided to sue the Clinton administration, took it all the way to the Supreme Court and beat him. But he's the last guy on the video. Well, questions and answers. Defining we the people for constitutional sheriffs. Who exactly are we? Well, we've been to numerous counties in northeast Iowa, and we've been accused of a lot of things. First of all, we're not politically affiliated or motivated. We believe politics is like arguing over picking up the clean end of a turd and just about as productive. This isn't about right or left, red or blue, white or black, male or female. This is about your rights and your rights regardless of what right or left you are. We're about all God-given rights for all American citizens no matter what. We're not anti-government. On the contrary, we're about the right-sized government controlled by we the people. We're not affiliated with any other organizations, and when we've gone to numerous counties in northeast Iowa, we've been accused of being part of the Proud Boys, part of the white supremacists, and all kinds of stuff. But that's not what we are. We are Iowans supporting all Iowans' constitutional rights. We're not sovereign citizens determined to defy the law. On the contrary, we respect and have love for law and order. What we believe. We believe that a lack of education and understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights leads to poor training of sheriffs and deputies to unknowingly violate people's rights. We believe the sheriff's responsibility to understand the Constitution of the United States and the state of Iowa and uphold his oath of office to defend them. Title 18 U.S. Code Section 242 addresses the deprivation of rights under the color of law. Well, what's color of law, you say? Color of law refers to an act done under the appearance of legal authority. And that's what we see a lot today. The federal government is passing laws that thinks they got jurisdiction to do that. A sheriff needs to recognize an unjust law. What's an unjust law? An unjust law is one that counters the Constitution and violates the Bill of Rights. There's constant government overreach. Every gun law that they pass, and that's about every other month it seems like, is unconstitutional. The Brady bill was passed, and like I said before, Sheriff Mack's story told the federal government that we don't have to do that. That's not our job. We work for the people. We don't work for the federal government. More recently, we've had First Amendment violations where they closed down churches and government buildings. 10th Amendment violations where the federal government thinks it has authority over the states. The states formed the federal government. The federal government didn't form the states. What about not allowing ones to attend relatives' funeral? There's probably everybody in here knows of a case during COVID that they wouldn't let them attend their funeral because they wanted to have control, I guess. Mask mandates, vaccine mandates in public, and the list goes on and on. The Constitution dictates that only Congress shall make laws under Article 1, Section 1. At the same time, Article 1, Section 8 limits the power of the federal government. That's the enumerated powers clause that you may have heard them talk about in the news. It lists what the government's jobs are, and everything that's not on that list is left to the states to do. Every three-letter government agency uses extortion to gain adherence to their rules. We've been to numerous counties, like I said, in northeast Iowa, wanting these counties to declare their county a constitutional county. Part of the thing is, if we can have a sanctuary county, why can't we have a constitutional county where they tell the federal government, we're not going to put up with you overreaching your bounds? We've had numerous county supervisors say that they are reluctant to do that, I should say, because they accept federal funds. Well, what's that tell me? That tells me that they're willing to sell your rights out for a price. The hierarchy of authority. We believe, like the Founding Fathers did, that God is the ultimate authority. God made man. Man created society, we the people. Society created the states. And the states created the federal government. Now somehow in the last 100 years, this has got turned completely upside down, and now the federal government thinks they're in God's place. We don't agree with that. Founding Fathers have put in checks and balances on the power that rests in the hands of we the people. Now if you got your car stolen, do you call an attorney? Or do you call a sheriff? And he's not even mentioned in the Constitution. Does the sheriff have the power? The most powerful individual in our elected or executive system of government are the law enforcement officers or the sheriff. They decide what laws to enforce because they're on the front line. If they don't understand what's an unjust law and what is a just law, they got no idea whether they should enforce it or not. Not knowing the Bill of Rights can destroy or even end someone's life. The 10th Amendment upheld the state's authority over federal law, and that was what Sheriff Mack sued the federal government about, was over the 10th Amendment. The sheriff's identified as the chief law enforcement officer in his county. And that's because he's elected by the people. He's not appointed by somebody else. As an elected official, the sheriff's the ultimate protector of the people, providing a check and balance locally for any state or federal agency that may infringe the constitutional rights of the people. As an example of that, we have one sheriff in northeast Iowa that had OSHA come into his office. And he says, "What can I do to help you?" And they said, "We're here to see all the records of all your deputies that have been vaccinated." And he said, well, the sheriff told the OSHA people, he says, "Well, that's unconstitutional. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And they said, "No, that's all we need to see." And he said, "Well, then this meeting's over." And it was over. Our mission is to help educate and train sheriffs, deputies, along with the general public, and help them understand the Constitution of the United States and the state of Iowa. And his ultimate responsibility, his main responsibility, is to uphold his office to preserve the constitutional rights of his constituents. Samuel Adams, one of our founding fathers, said, "If ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall possess the highest seats in the government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin." I'm going to leave that up there for a second and let that sink in. Because is that not what's going on today? We've got a lot of people in higher offices that think they got the ultimate, it's time to take our country back. Our call to action tonight, we're looking for motivated individuals to be part of this movement to vet, elect, and support a constitutional sheriff so we can take our country back. In Delaware County, our sheriff is going to retire, so it's time for us to elect a new sheriff. And we're looking for people to help us look for a constitutional sheriff, like the one I told you about that told OSHA this meeting's over. Somebody that's willing to learn more about the Constitution, somebody that is more willing to be aware of what's going on in the public school system, because they're not even teaching a lot of this government stuff in public schools anymore. Kris Ann Hall will address that in the video when we get to that. We're looking for somebody to ask questions of their public officials. If something's not right, we need to have answers to them why they're letting us get by with that. Looking for somebody to take action and stay consistent. In order to, if you're interested in getting involved and help make a difference, we're having a meeting on Saturday, February 26th at 8 o'clock in the morning. There's a brochure back on the table explaining when it is and where it is. It's at 909 West Main Street, lower level is where it's going to be. And the flyers are in the back of the room, like I said. First they came for my Fourth Amendment, but I had nothing to hide. Next they came for the Second Amendment, but I was willing to comply. Then they came for my First Amendment, and I had nothing to say. Finally, they came for me, and there was nothing left for my defense. Kris Ann Hall. She's the lady that's going to be the first one on the video that we're going to show you. We're having a special event. She's coming to Northeast Iowa, to the Arlington Community Center in Arlington, Iowa, on March 14th at 6 o'clock. There's a brochure in the back of the table over there for that, too, if you're interested in coming to that. We're going to show you the video now. Like I said before, Kris Ann Hall is the first one on this video. It lasts for about 30 minutes. And the last guy on there is Sheriff Mack, explaining some of the things of why the sheriff's got the authority that he's got.
Unanimously, the groups that I speak to all believe, all know that our governments are out of control. Right, left, liberal, conservative.
But everywhere I go, what do you think the most asked question I get is? How do we fix this?
We have activist judges. We have governors that act more like monarchs than representatives of the people. We have sheriffs who blindly enforce law. We have county commissioners and city councilmen and state legislators that simply ignore the people and trample the rights of their constituents. We have a Congress that seems more concerned about politics and special interests than the liberties of the people.
How do we fix this? If we had been teaching history properly for the last 100 years, if we had been teaching the Constitution properly for the last 100 years, we wouldn't have that question. We wouldn't be where we are today, mind you. But we wouldn't have that question because we'd know exactly what to do.
I started reading the Constitution itself and what it means. And I thought to myself, we weren't taught this in law school. We don't teach this in grade school. We don't teach this in high school. We don't teach this in college. These are things that anybody can get on their cell phone. They can read this. They can know this. Why is this information being hidden from us? Why aren't we being taught? And I want to teach you,
to equip you,
so you can know the truth about limited government power.
To inspire you. Einstein said it a different way. He said if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. It's time for us to stop doing the same thing. And I mean, it's time for us to stop showing up at the ballot box and thinking that when we hit that little dot, pull that little lever, punch that little screen, that we're making some kind of magic happen. That 3 minutes, once every 2 years if you're diligent, once every 4 years if you're not. And if you'll admit, the majority of the people you know never even looked at the ballot before they showed up. William Pitt the Younger said in 1783, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants, and it is the creed of slaves." We don't have to invent or figure out how to fix this. History and our founders have already given us that information. America was built on the fundamental principles of the natural rights of man. Samuel Adams said, "Among the natural rights of the colonists are these: first, life; second, liberty; third, property; together, number 4, with the right to support and defend them in the best manner they can." You have an individual right to secure your own life, your own liberty, your own property, because if you do not have that right, that inalienable right to secure yourself, your property, which is necessary to life, your liberty, which is necessary to property and life, if you do not have an individual, unquestionable right to defend yourself, you are a slave.
And this information is going to absolutely startle you, and it's going to give you hope, and you're going to feel hopeful after we leave here tonight. And people will say after, "This is the first time I've really had hope in a long time." And I said, "You couldn't give me any better compliment in the world than to tell me that." But folks, this is it. Hope is from God. And I am part of a message here. And there is no question that this miracle has brought me to this location and to this time, and for America to get back to its foundation. And that excites me. We're going to have an amazing night. And I'm going to share one miracle with you. First, how I even ran for sheriff was a miracle. I wasn't even thinking about that. I didn't want to do it. And my wife's parents just kept calling us and say, "You got to move home and run for sheriff." And both my wife and I, for the first time, agreed that her parents were crazy. It's the first time. Okay? And so, as it progressed, I told my wife, and I said, "We just got to sit down one night before we went to bed." I said, "Let's write all the pros and cons. Why we're not moving home and running for sheriff." Okay? And so we wrote all those down and sent them to him, and it meant nothing, especially her mom. She doesn't ever take no for an answer. She doesn't understand the word. It's out of her vocabulary. And so we really put it out of our minds. We're not doing it. Okay? And one day, and this is in Provo, Utah, where I was a cop. This book, that picture is when I was a cop in Provo. Yes, that's 35 years ago. And the proper role of law enforcement. And I put some things I put my own personal conversion story in here. Not to the gospel, but to the Constitution. I was a rookie cop, and I started studying the Constitution because of all the things I saw in government just really bothered me. And so I said, well, I'm gonna start studying my oath of office and the Constitution, and I did. And I didn't have one of these pocket-sized constitutions. I got the World Book Encyclopedia, and great big old book, and I put it in my patrol car, and I studied it and studied it and studied it. And I was totally converted to the Constitution. And so one day I was a detective at the time, and I specialized in crimes against children. And it was a horrible job in a lot of ways, because I saw these things that happen to children from their own family and parents sometimes. It was just, it was horrible. And in fact, I love telling police stories, but I don't ever talk about those. And in fact, I want to get those out of my mind a lot of times. And so I went somewhere in uniform, and I don't know where it was. It must have been a parade or something. I had to be in uniform. And I got home, and I was looking at my wife, and I could tell something was on her mind, and something just hit me. And I turned to my wife, and I said, "I'm never going to wear this uniform again." She goes, "I know, that's what I was just thinking." And 3 weeks later, we moved home and ran for sheriff. And I don't know, neither one of my wife can tell you really why that happened. we didn't want to do it. And I just picked up my family, took leave from Provo, and put my kids in school in Arizona, and where I was raised as a boy, and my wife was raised there. Both our parents lived there. My dad was an FBI agent there. And we ran for sheriff. I hadn't even lived there for 12 years. I'd never worked as a peace officer in the state of Arizona or in my county. And I walked in town and worked my tail off. The whole family did, especially my wife. And I was elected, barely. And then 4 years later, 1992, I was reelected. And my wife and I would talk sometimes about why this miracle of being sheriff. Nothing's happened. What was the miracle for? So I could help old ladies across the street, or so I could handle the DUIs, or I could what? I didn't see it. And then I went to this meeting in Phoenix with the Sheriff's Association, and there's only 15 counties in Arizona. It's the 6th largest state, but there's only 15 counties. And my county was the fourth smallest, but we had them this meeting. There's only 13 sheriffs there, 2 didn't show, and there's 3 agents there of the BATF. Everybody know what that is? Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They're federal agents that oversee gun licensures and gun ownership, and they're basically tracing all our guns. Okay, and they were there, and they handed us a document that detailed our marching orders as to what we had to do to comply with the Brady Bill. And all the sheriffs are just looking at each other, and you can hear all this murmuring and cussing, and it's really it's getting bad. And these 3 agents of the BHF are kind of like getting, okay, why is everybody mad at us? And so I told the agents, I said, you 3 guys know that we don't work for you, right? They go, well, that's kind of changed now because Congress passed a law. And I said, I don't care if Congress passes 500 laws. We don't work for you. Okay? You can't pass a law of something you have no authority to pass a law on in the first place. We don't work for you. And they just kind of shrugged, and they said, well, we've done our job. These are your marching orders. Okay, see ya. And every sheriff was so against it and really mad because in the Brady Bill itself, it has a threat to arrest the sheriffs if we fail to comply. So if we say no to the feds, we can get a year in prison, $10,000 fine, or both. And I'll show you that threat as we go along with this. I'll actually show you the threat so people don't think I make these things up. As a matter of fact, there's going to be very few times while we're together tonight that I will give you my opinions. This isn't my opinion. I didn't travel all this way to bore you with a bunch of opinions. I brought you the evidence that what my thesis is, that the sheriffs can do this. And I was just talking to Sheriff Tom Hodgson in Massachusetts about a month ago. We were talking about all the horrible things at the border, all the horrible things going on, all of the gun control, everything else. He said, Sheriff, and he knows I knew this because he's been to our conferences before. He said, it's really amazing. The sheriffs of this country can stop all of it. And he told the absolute truth. It's true. They can, we can, and we must. Because I see no other way to do it without violence. And I'm going to cover stuff that's going to be new to you, but I'm also going to cover stuff that isn't new at all. The Constitution, the oath of office, personal and individual liberty, America, American ideals, and how we get all those back is going to be a very simple solution. It's not easy to implement, but it is a simple solution. We swear an oath in God's name to uphold and defend the Constitution. We understand that oath. We know and understand the Constitution, and we do it and we apply it every day in our jobs. Did you know that the most important thing that a patrol officer can do is keep his oath of office, uphold and defend the Constitution? That's it. We put liberty first. We put American ideals first, and we keep our word to uphold and defend the Constitution. There you go. That's the solution, and it's peaceful, and it's effective. You are their boss, and you need to know what they're supposed to be doing, and you need to know what they're supposed to know. But did you realize that the sheriff it only answers to you. He has no other supervisor and he has no other boss. You are the sheriff's boss. And every 4 years you do a review of the work he's done, and you decide whether or not to keep him as the appointed sheriff. You appoint him. It's the electoral process, of course, but you appoint him every 4 years. You decide who your sheriff is going to be. And you know what that is? That is a definition, or at least an example, of a constitutional republic. The people choose is what makes us a republic. And we have a rule book within that republic that's called the Constitution. We get back to the Constitution, we save America. We get sheriffs to keep their oath of office, we do that tomorrow. And that's why this amazing solution is so vital and important to each one of us. After that meeting with the Sheriff's Association, I decided on my way home, I had a 2.5-hour drive to get back home. As soon as I pulled up in my driveway, it hit me. Not my decision, but it hit me. I'm going to sue my own federal government. The Clinton administration. I'm going to sue the Clintons. Oh, yay, I'm so glad. I get to sue the Clintons. You know, and so, and I'm going to tell you, I was scared. I really was. And then I felt like Ratevia in The Fiddler on the Roof. I know we're the chosen people, but why can't you choose somebody else some of the time? And I just felt like I was just kind of, oh, you think I'm going to sue the Clintons? The wife in there, in the house I'm going to go tell this to now, is going to say, absolutely not. You don't know her. Well, you should. But so I went in the house and I tell her what's going on. And she goes, maybe now we know why you were supposed to be sheriff. Folks, man, you don't want to marry a wife like that, you know? You want her to play her part better. No! Go golfing! You know, this is crazy. She never faltered one iota from her decision to go ahead and do this. If she had said no, this would have never happened. Never. Okay? And so the miracle starts, and the miracles after miracles. A small town sheriff, Graham County, Arizona, takes this case for the first time that a sheriff ever did anything like this in the history of America, goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and wins. A major landmark decision. Yeah, thank you. So, restoring our Constitution as the supreme law of the land is the goal here. Thus, restoring liberty to each of us. Now, we've all been through a horrible past 16 months, haven't we? Yeah. It's been absolutely horrible. And on December 8th, I got COVID. And I got it really, really bad. So I'm not doubting that virus exists. What I doubt and what I don't believe is everything they told us about it. And then what I doubted even more is that any public official had any authority to tell us how to have Thanksgiving, tell us to stay home from church, and arrest ministers and people going to church, arrest us for not wearing a mask, and stop us from going to school anymore. The destruction of liberty that happened during the past 15, 16 months has been totally and completely evil and unconstitutional. Okay, state nullification. Anybody know what that is? Did I make that up? No, I did not. But Thomas Jefferson and James Madison did. They're the ones talking about state nullification, and that the states should nullify what the federal government is doing. And say, why? We just say no. We nullify it. And look at this part in gold. States have the authority to judge the constitutionality of the federal government's laws and decrees. I thought that was the U.S. Supreme Court. We already determined they don't have time to do all that. And why is it totally proper for the states to do this? Because we formed them. We formed the federal government. And anybody who thinks that we formed the new federal government to be our boss and to tell us what to do and run our lives after we just got rid of King George III and the English Parliament, But they have very limited powers. And if they ever want to go outside that, what must they do? Read the 10th Amendment. And what must the states do? Enforce the 10th Amendment. Okay? States' rights is very key in all of this. The word in this whole paragraph here is interpose. You can see it in gold. But look at the part right above it. That state's legislature is duty-bound to interpose its power to prevent the federal government from victimizing its people. Do we really understand the doctrine of interposition? Do we know what interpose means? Okay, let me explain this. A parent interposes for the child that's getting too close to danger. Whether it's a cliff or a hole or drugs or any of these horrible things going on in our world today, the good parent interposes, puts herself in the way of the danger. The child is here, the danger is here, the parent goes here. Now, I learned this in basketball. My coach didn't say interpose, but he said, you got to stay between your man and the basket. If he moves, you move. And that's what interpose is. So the IRS comes in to abuse citizens and victimize its people. Then the sheriff puts himself in the way. And he doesn't allow it. Okay, these are the two sheriffs that went to the Supreme Court, Prince and yours truly. And why did we do it? Well, this is one of the quotes from the decision. We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that? Your governor and everybody in the state legislature would know that? Well, you need to get them a copy of that decision. I mean, how would you like to have that whole Supreme Court decision of all the highlights? It's already here. It's here. Just hand it to people. This is amazing. And we haven't even got to the big stuff yet. This is still the innocuous stuff. Folks, this is the most amazing, powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country, and who knows about it? Well, all of us in here do now. Okay. Now look what the judge said. This is Judge John Roll at the district court. He summarizes why I sued the federal government. Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the act. Watch, he doesn't call it a law, does he? Subjecting himself to possible sanctions. Remember the sanctions? Remember? They threatened to arrest us. A $10,000 fine and 1 year in prison if I say no to the federal government. Folks, you remember I told you this was the Clinton administration. I sued the Clintons and lived to tell about it. Okay, and Ronald Reagan talked about the federal tax system. Man, you can't assail the federal tax system more than he does here. Federal tax system is utterly impossible, utterly unjust, completely counterproductive. It reeks with injustice and is fundamentally un-American, and it has earned a place for a rebellion. That's Ronald Reagan. And he didn't change any of that, to be honest with you. I'm glad he said this, but he didn't really do anything to stop it.
Tried to assassinate him.
Yeah, third month that he was in office. I was very much aware of that. That's part of my case here. But this is amazing. And so I ask every sheriff in this country, why would you allow IRS agents in your county so they can continue to do this kind of injustice to the American people in your county? And this is, let's be honest here. Show me any Republican or any Democrat in Washington, D.C. that has done anything about this to stop this injustice. And so who is supposed to, I'm telling you right now, Sheriff Hodgson from Massachusetts was absolutely correct. The sheriffs can stop it. And this, I don't even think this would be that difficult. You let the IRS know that the Bill of Rights will be enforced strictly in your county and that you will be checking on everything they do. Wow. That will pretty much stop the IRS because there's nothing they do that's constitutional. Nothing. Okay? How long are we going to allow that criminal organization to continue to victimize Americans and we don't do anything about it? Come on. This isn't that difficult, but it takes some courage and it takes some recognition. Okay, you stupid colonists, we're going to let you have your taxes back. And then they passed the Declaratory Act. What did Paine call it? Slavery. And we've come full circle, folks. That's what Congress thinks that they can do today. Is there anything Congress thinks that they can't pass against us? Any law that is out of bounds? Even when it's guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, the list of untouchables? They can tell us how to have Thanksgiving. They can tell us where we can go, what we can do, what we can eat, where we can shop, what we have to wear. And if we can go to church. And they think they can do all that and just tell the CDC to tell us to do it. And they've never even passed legislation about any of it. None of them. And then law enforcement thinks it has some sort of responsibility to enforce it, when it's not even a law. Okay? This is Thomas Paine. He's describing that, and he's describing the corruption of our government today, even though this is 1775. What signifies it to me? What difference does it make to me, he's saying? Whether he who destroys my property and kills or threatens to kill me is a king or a common man, my countryman or not my countryman, whether it be done by an individual villain or an army of them. If we reason to the root of things, we shall find no difference. Neither can any just cause be assigned why we should punish in the one case and pardon in the other. This is exactly what's going on today, and this has been done for decades, maybe even longer. And so I ask every sheriff in this country, why would you allow IRS criminality, DEA criminals, and any other federal agent to come into your county without some sort of check and balance on what he's doing? We had a bridge wash out in our county back in 1995. And the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA wouldn't let us fix the bridge because they had to conduct their environmental impact study. And 9 months later, they still don't have it done. And the people who can't use that bridge are really getting ticked. And you know who they're getting ticked at? The county commissioners. Because they're just sitting there waiting for the EPA and Army Corps of Engineers to fix the bridge. And it's our bridge. And we're not trying to do a new bridge. We're just going to fix the bridge like it was before the flood. I know that's horrible for the federal government to understand. And so finally, the 3 board members on the county commission vote unanimously to fix the bridge. Then the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA threatened to arrest them. And they said, we're going to charge you $50,000 a day for every day you're in violation. $50,000. And they're going to arrest all the maintenance workers at the scene. Now you guys know the sheriff is in charge of bridges, right? I wasn't involved until what? They threatened to arrest everybody in my county that's going to fix the bridge. So I called the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA into my office. And I said, I don't know if you guys have heard that I'm really kind of a crazy kind of guy because I'm already suing the Clinton administration. And we heard something about that. Well, let me tell you something. I'm really easy to get along with. I'm a nice guy, okay? And but there's just a couple of things you're not going to do in my county. Like you're not going to arrest anybody. And if you do, I'm going to arrest you. And I don't know where you think you're going to take them after you arrest them, but you're not bringing them to my jail. But you're not arresting them at all. Because if you do, I'm going to arrest you. And so we had that little talk, and they left town. We fixed the bridge. Nobody paid a dime in fines, and everybody was happy because they left. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. When you came to this meeting tonight, did you want to know how to reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse in America? There it is. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will do that. When we have local and state officials that have the courage to interpose on our behalf. And it's peaceful, and it's effective, and it's wonderful, and it's immediate. We don't have to wait for another politician to try to promise us something else. We do it together now. Do not leave the sheriff alone to do this without you. We must stand beside him and behind him. And we take back liberty tomorrow. Folks, this is real. It's an absolute solution. And the sheriff, with you standing with him and his deputies, will erect the barriers against these crises and protect us all from tyranny and restore the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. This isn't just hope. This is real. I've already seen sheriffs do that. Do you know how many sheriffs stood all across the country in the last 16 months? It's astonishing. It's the most ever. So there's been a little bit of a silver lining in all this crap because sheriffs recognized it. Sheriff Lamb in Arizona said, we're not going to shut any businesses down. Sure, we'll go do a walkthrough in these businesses and bars and restaurants, and we'll encourage people to be safe and to do what's best to protect themselves. But we're not forcing anybody to shut down. We're not their boss. And we certainly are not the mask police. Loved it when they said that.
There you have it. There's your solution. But like everything else in this world, nothing's for free. It's going to take some effort to get a constitutional candidate and get him elected, and then support him after he's elected. Any questions?
Repeat that last part, Bruce. Your mic wasn't on. You're good now. Yeah, you're good now.
There you have it. It's peaceful, effective, but like everything else in this country, nothing's for free. It's going to take some effort to vet a constitutional candidate for sheriff, and once get him elected, support him. This isn't about defund the police. Questions? Comments? Arguments? Paul?
How many counties are following?
Following what?
Following constitutional sheriff.
One that I know of, and we've been to numerous counties in the northeast quadrant of Iowa. We can't get any supervisors to buy into the constitutional county concept where they're going to tell the federal government that we're not going to comply if it violates our constitutional rights. And the biggest thing is, I think they all accept federal money from the federal government. And like I said before, every three-letter agency from the federal government uses coercion to make you comply. Well, we're giving you this money, this federal money, and we're dangling this carrot out there. You take this money, and you will do this, this, and this. So that's part of the problem. And maybe we need to be looking at re-electing different supervisors, too, if they got that kind of an attitude.
Make sure to repeat their question, because we don't have another mic.
Okay. Any other questions? Pardon? I didn't quite get that.
The money that we pay into the federal government, the money they give us back, is it we get more money than we give them, or vice versa? Because if we turn around and said, we're not going to send our federal money in, if the sheriff was standing behind us, we took care of our own county, why do we need the federal government?
Well, this has been kind of a bugaboo of mine because your local school board is a prime example of that. They take state money to run the school board. And if they took that money that they got from the state government and told them thanks but no thanks, and they took the tax base from the county to run their schools, they wouldn't have to provide breakfast for kids. I mean, I don't know since when these people have kids and they expect everybody else to take care of them, but when I had my kids, I had to take care of them. So when they do that, I'm not privy to the bookwork involved of what tax base comes to the school district, but then they might have to run the thing as a business. Now, isn't that a novel concept?
A year ago, I had a state senator tell me that 57% of our state budget goes to education. 57%. Now, I'm sure that includes the state universities as well. 57% of our budget goes to state education. That does not include money that the property taxes give to the school systems. That does not include what we get from the federal government for our school systems. So we get all this money for our school systems, and they can't teach the Constitution. There's something wrong here. He went on to say that 93% of our state budget goes for education, medication for taking care of, all the medical stuff in the state, mental institutions. And the third part, about 93%, goes to state prisons, state penal institutions. So he said the motto in Des Moines is educate, medicate, and incarcerate. 93% of our budget. So there's something wrong someplace here. So Iowa used to be number one in education in the 50s and 60s when I went to school. We are not anymore. And when we did it in the 50s and 60s, we didn't take 1 penny from the federal government. So there's something really, really wrong here.
Well, when they take money from the state, then they got to have so many buses because they got to bus these kids halfway across the county. Used to be the parents' responsibility to get the kids to school. Ma'am.
The Constitution also says that if a subject is not mentioned in the Constitution, it is not up to the federal government to do it like the Secretary of Education, which that's alien as all get out. That should never been appointed. And I think more people should know about the Constitution. It should be local school boards, the state government, explaining what we should do in our schools.
We know what to do better than the federal government does. That's plain fact. Don't talk with your hands over your mouth, Mike.
Could you please repeat what you said?
Basically, if I can repeat that, Mike, you want to know, are you wanting to know, is the federal government putting or bringing down what's supposed to be taught in the schools? Well, what do we teach our kids on a local level is a local problem. It's got nothing to do with the federal government, number one. Federal Department of Education, what good do they do? I say the Federal Department of Education, what do they do? Now, I worked for the federal government for a while, and when I worked there, you weren't not supposed to discriminate against anybody. Now we got wokeness in the schools and CRT, and they're discriminating against anybody with the wrong skin color. This has turned completely around, and I don't know how it got turned around. It's just like that one slide I had where they've turned this upside down, and the federal government thinks they're now God. I think so too. He wants to know if I can name the counties that are a problem. I don't know if I can name them off the top of my head. We've been to numerous counties in northeast Iowa trying to get local people in those counties together to make people aware of what we're talking about here tonight and try to get them to elect county sheriffs that are constitutional. We've got sheriffs in northeast Iowa that say they're constitutional, but what they do completely tells you that they're not constitutional. Now, the guy that had the guys from OSHA in his office, you can pretty well tell he's a constitutional sheriff because he wasn't going to put up with their Mickey Mouse stuff. I'm not going to say. You talk to me afterwards, I'll tell you who it is, but I'm not going to say.
I'd like to just kind of give a little bit overview, back up a little bit. There's several counties in the United States that have gone to what they call constitutional counties. And these are resolutions passed by the supervisors or commissioners, depending on the state, whatever you want to call them. And what they basically said is that if the state government and the federal government are not going to honor our Bill of Rights, then we at the local level, as the county commissioners and county supervisors, will honor your Bill of Rights. So if somebody says you're not going to go to church because of some pandemic or whatever, they will not allow that to happen in their county. If a church says we're not going to go to church, that's fine. The county cannot tell you to do that. So, but in order to do that, you have to have a sheriff that is willing to do it as well, because if the county commissioners pass it, the sheriff's not a constitutional sheriff. It won't work. So you have to have a constitutional sheriff in order for the counties to pass a constitutional county resolution. So we approached several counties in northeast Iowa, and none of the supervisors wanted to do it because one county, like we said, well, if we do that, we may not get federal funding for some projects. Other counties said, well, that's not our job. That's the state's job and the federal government job. We even had one supervisor say, well, if you think your rights are being abused, go hire an attorney. Good luck with that one, finding a constitutional attorney that's going to stand up for your rights. You'll look long and hard, and I have, and you won't find them. Because they don't know the Constitution. They don't know how to stand up for your First Amendment rights. But in this county, back to the whole thing why we're here tonight, is we want to have a call to action in Delaware County. And Bruce said that we're going to have a meeting on the 26th, Saturday.
28th, I think it was. Was it 6th?
26th.
Excuse me.
26th on Saturday at 909 West Main Street here in Manchester. Our core group, people here that put it on that have these orange tags, are going to be there, and we're going to talk to you about forming a subgroup from our group, specifically for Delaware County, to help find a new candidate for sheriff that's going to be a constitutional sheriff. And let's just say we do, so where do we go from there? These sheriffs, as you heard from Sheriff Mack up here say, they need constant support. You can't say, well, we got that constitutional sheriff and walk away from it and not do anything. You got to be there to support him, encourage people, educate people, and Bruce indicated too that we're going to have Kris Hall come in and have a public meeting for all of you. But we're also going to have the next day public education, or not public education, private education for all the sheriffs in Northeast Iowa that want to come here to Kris Hall. We're going to have 2-3 hour segments that she teaches specifically for sheriffs and their deputies. So we've sent out a circular to all those sheriffs in 20 counties in Northeast Iowa that we're going to have this. And Sheriff Mack came, we did the same thing. We had 31 sheriffs and deputies show up to that training. So we're going to also have training for our sheriffs as well as to the public for all of you. The public event will be videoed by Paul. The sheriff's events will be private because we feel that they'll be more willing to ask questions, get involved, and so that would be a private event. Again, at this table back here is a call to action poster. You can take one with you if you want to come to that meeting and get involved. If you want to get involved, it's a lot of work. I'll say that right up front, but anything that's worthwhile is a lot of work. So if you want to come and hear about what you can do and how you can help, be sure to pick up one of these before you leave. We'll be at the back table, and we have lots of other stuff at the back table too that's free. One other thing that we have back there, we have a document that says Sheriff more powerful than the President. It's a 4-page document written by an Alan Stang. It's a very, very powerful document, and it tells you why the sheriff in 4 pages is more powerful than the President. So, Bruce?
I got one thing, if I could.
Go.
I'm 72 years old. I spent 20 years at Uncle Sam's Navy. Retired back here. 4 or 5 years ago, my dad said something to me that I thought would just move here to hell. And what he said was, I'm not worried about you kids or your kids, but their kids. And damn it, I'm seeing it coming right now. And it scares the living hell out of me.
Paul?
Can you tell them where we sent these DVDs? And there's some over there too. So.
The DVD. There's a copy there if you want one. We sent one of those to each one of the sheriffs in Iowa, and we sent one to each one of our state legislators. So they're aware of what we're up to. Any other questions?
What about sending to the deputy sheriff, so we can get behind them and everybody support the Constitution for the sheriff?
We want to work with the deputies too, because they're out in the front line just like, well, they're out in the front line more than the sheriff is. It's like I had a sign up in my office when people came in. They said, do you want to talk to the boss, or do you want to talk to somebody that knows what's going on? So the deputies are probably just as important as the sheriff, but the sheriff's got to give the deputies direction, so they both need to be worked on.
I had one sheriff email me today, when Kris comes, he's sending all of his deputies to Kris Hall.
Yes, sir.
If you talk to the deputies, get the deputies on board, they could be the future sheriff, the future sheriff not doing the job.
That's true. That's why we need to work on them as well as the sheriff. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. I'm going to answer that, but if you got any other things to say, Gary, or anybody else, jump in. But from what I've heard of these constitutional sheriffs that we know are constitutional, they're more than willing to work with anybody if they're wanting to work with them. Now, I will tell you, there's one sheriff just to the east of here that he is not a constitutional sheriff, and he has no interest at all in becoming a constitutional sheriff because he knows better. I heard him say that in a public meeting, so I know it's true.
Hey, Bruce, I got one thing. I know we've touched on the
sheriffs and the deputies and the supervisors, one thing that we did see that we didn't talk about was the county attorney.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So they pull a lot of weight, probably more than they should. A great man once told me that, you know, your attorney should kind of be like your accountant or your doctor. You know, you hire them for their opinion, you don't have to take it. Right? So if the county attorney is not a constitutional attorney, where does that leave you? I think you can put the pieces together there. And we can tell by talking to these supervisors and even the sheriff in Delaware County, not to throw him under the bus, but I'm going to kind of throw him under the bus. He said, well, I have to ask my attorney, my county attorney. Just to add that in.
Okay, one thing.
That's part of the education process, though, because he doesn't know that the county attorney is not his boss.
Exactly, that's a good point. I wanted to expound upon that. Just a second, we'll get to your question. When that person takes their oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution, anybody who's in the military with that same oath, you don't have to obey in a legal order in the military if you know the order is illegal. Like, if you're out on patrol and your platoon leader says, shoot that woman, you know that's a legal order. She's just a civilian. So the same thing. The sheriff takes that oath of office. He better know his Constitution. Sure, he can go ask the county attorney, well, what do you think about this or that? But when it comes down to it, it's that sheriff that will build the office. He has to stand by that decision, not that a county attorney. And often county attorneys, with all due respect, will say, well, I don't know if we should do that or not because we might get in trouble. You know, we don't want to have to. Go ahead.
Lynn County has a constitutional sheriff. I spoke with him a week ago Tuesday. Violations at the Cedar Rapids Community School District violations. By the time I was done, they violated at least 36 national and state statutes as well as constitutional violations. He said flat out to me, in writing as well, that he will not enforce that or he will not pursue that. I asked him for his bond. He didn't realize that we could pull a bond because all public officials have to be bonded to be able to hold office. So he didn't even know that was the Constitution that we could do that. So then when I told him, yes, you do, if I could have it, you know, immediately, it just wasn't presented on demand. It took him 24 hours to get it to me after he talked to the risk management supervisor for Lynn County. Then it was in my inbox. So the next steps are, okay, we're going to either follow the Constitution or I'm going to claim on your phone. So for those of you that don't know that, you can do that with your county sheriff.
Good for you.
Exactly right. He's exactly right. If you want to know more about it, go to the website Bonds for the Win. WIN, Bonds for the Win.
Anybody that takes you has to have that bond.
Mm-hmm.
As Strawberry's organization pointed out about their campers, they're all on the bond. It's unconstitutional.
Yeah, there's really no idea that the Cedar Rapids Community School District on their bond. It's over $333 billion for the system on their bond. I just finally got in contact with their attorney today. It took them 3 weeks to get back to me.
Imagine that. Part of the thing that wasn't on that video that we'd cut out was a guy went to the hospital in Phoenix to have a checkup or something, and he was working with this male nurse. And he asked the male nurse where he's from, and he said, well, I'm from Graham County, Arizona. He said, oh, really? He says, I work for the EPA, and he says, the sheriff there threw me out of the county. And the male nurse says, yeah, that would be my dad. Anything else? You got all your questions answered already? Well, I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you.